Grace, peace, and welcome to Podcast of the Wills, the podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. I am Nick Milkey, and we are hanging out on a Tuesday night. We are not hanging out on a Sunday afternoon or evening or whatever. I had a busy weekend. My wife returned home from being out of town this weekend, and so we straight up fam jam piled up on the couch Sunday night, and we watched The Office, and we hung out. So we decided to do this on a Tuesday just to change things up, to keep you guessing. So thanks for being here. If you're one of our Patreon subscribers, if you're one of our patrons, you are hanging out potentially in the live chat with us tonight, having a conversation, enjoying the conversation that I get to have, which I'm really excited about. And we will get to that in just a minute. In the meantime, T-shirts are always available. We didn't do a great job of announcing it recently, we have moved all of the Podcast of the Wills T-shirts over to the ATG Cast store in our continual super team up to bring everything under the ATG Cast umbrella, share content, share streams, all that. So if you need T-shirts, that's the place to find not only ATG Cast shirts, Podcast of the Wills stuff, but the streaming Star Wars logos that Pete made with all the different domes and Book of Boba Fett characters. All that great stuff is there. In fact, I got this one as a sticker, and it makes me really happy. It's the Rancor, and I like that it's kind of die cut and just turned out kind of cool. So if you want anything like that, it's all at TeePublic ATG Cast. You can search for it, and it will be there. Tonight, we are digging into Chapter 2 of our, I almost said Return of the Jedi. That is not what we're doing. We're doing the Phantom Menace canon study. Last week, we talked to Peter Townley and had a great kickoff. If you missed that, the audio is going to be out in a couple of weeks. I have some heavy editing to do, not because it was bad, but because Peter knows lots of history things. And we probably spent like an hour and 15 minutes just dissecting the opening crawl of Phantom Menace, which I was totally there for. So I don't know if I'm going to have to make that like a mega episode or 2 episodes. We'll figure that out. It was a lot of fun. And tonight is going to be no exception because I have 2 of my favorite people that I have gotten to know over the last 6 months, year. I don't know how long it's been because when you find good friends and good people, time kind of doesn't matter. But I'm excited to welcome tonight from the Nerdherder podcast, which if you are not listening to, you should be. What's wrong with you? They're talking about all the Batmans at the moment. In fact, I thought of them today because I was listening to the old How Did This Get Made episode where they talk about Batman and Robin. And it just makes me insanely happy and also sickly makes me want to watch Batman and Robin. But I'm excited to welcome tonight Boop and JD to come and hang out with me and talk about Phantom Menace.
You should watch Batman and Robin, dude.
We should all watch Batman and Robin.
It's a fun trip. Turn off your brain for a couple hours and just have fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How are you guys doing this evening?
Pretty good. Happy to be here after a long, crazy day on our end.
Totally understand.
I love your intro so much, by the way. I keep forgetting to tell you, but that's just such a good
well,
intro.
I appreciate that, and I do have to give all credit to the Podfather himself, Mr. Fletzer. Makes me he's kind of like Tony Stark in the Avengers, like he makes everything look cool, and I just show up and try to hit my mark and do what I'm supposed to. But
you're Spider Boy. It's perfect.
That's right, Spider Boy. I just need to.
I always knew you had a body for spandex. So
I was just about to say we're just not going to subject anyone to. I'm going to be Miles in like baggy sweatpants and a hoodie kind of Spider-Man. The middle-aged, or I guess I could be middle-aged dad bod Spider-Man.
You could be Peter B. Parker for Halloween this year.
Right.
Yeah, Spider-Verse really opened up a lot of cosplay possibilities there.
A lot of Spider-Man possibilities for all of us. Well, again, thank y'all so much for being here tonight. I'm excited to have this conversation and to get to chat with the both of you. I feel like I know you, and at the same time, there are parts of your story that I don't know that I've officially heard yet. So for me, and also for any of our listeners who may not be aware of who Nerdherder is, who Boop and JD are, give us a little kind of intro 101 to who you guys are, the podcast, that kind of stuff.
Go for it, babe.
Yeah, so we're a partner managed podcast. We started it together, do it together, and in the recent season have been inviting guests to join us in our nerdy conversations. Yeah, you were our most recent for a great episode about Star Wars Rebels, and yeah, I mean, we started what we do, and I know some of that will, from my prep for this episode, come into play with what we're gonna talk about today. But
Mhm.
we started it out of a place of needing to just kind of dwell on something that made us happy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Uh, and Star Wars was an easy pick, and it's since grown to where we talk about a lot of things, but always return to our big love of Star Wars. And that's why we center everything we do on fun, positivity, and
Hmm.
education, because that's what we like about Star Wars, and that's what we want to continue to promote and share and do with our time for sure.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, and I know, and we kind of talked about it because I was honored to be on, I guess it was this past Friday night. We talked about Rebels, which is, one of my deep, deep Star Wars abiding loves is Star Wars Rebels. And so to get
Mm.
the chance to talk about that with the two of you, right, as a part of Rebels Remembered Day, um, I love that. And I found you guys, of course, through our Star Wars content creating, but y'all cover so much other stuff. Like I mentioned, you guys are working your way through the different Batman films right now. I know I've tuned in on some episodes where you've talked about horror. I know Boop, you're a big horror fan.
Yes.
Y'all cover a wide range. Talk a little bit about, because obviously Star Wars can be your default, but talk about some of those other genres, other avenues and things that really, speak to you guys.
Well, like you said, I am a huge horror fan. That's kind of been my place of fandom for a really long time. So
Hmm.
I'd like to think that I'm well versed in horror. There is only a handful of things that we won't talk about in the horror universe. But I think I'm not sure what our next series for horror is going to be, but it's coming down the pipeline. Don't you worry, children. It's not going to be Cannibal Holocaust.
No.
Never going to talk about Cannibal Holocaust on the podcast. Definitely. But yeah, we cover such a wide range of video games. Like we did a full history study on Halo and The Legend of Zelda, one right after another.
Hmm.
Really, we cover anything that we feel is a part of us, something that we see meaning in general. It's something. Sometimes it's just stuff we think is fun, like we did with
Absolutely.
Batman.
Yeah, I was actually talking with someone recently and trying to get that across of like selfishly, and we love our listeners and we love our patrons and we love everyone that's supporting as a part of what we do. But selfishly, we do it for ourselves first. We podcast because we enjoy talking about things we enjoy,
Yes.
um, and certainly now with having guests aboard, it's like just getting to have a great conversation and then sharing it with someone. Um, and so we want to center those conversations on things that we all, again, kind of come to a place of positivity. Um,
Hmm.
we're all fans of critique and we all have critiques, but we always want to bring it back around to what I really enjoy. I mean, we had that conversation at length with Batman and Robin when we covered that because
Right.
sure, you can name 10 things wrong with that movie, but it's still a lot of fun.
So much fun.
Um,
Exactly.
and so we always want to bring it around there, and yeah, and definitely, uh, Boop kind of gets the horror and arts covered. She's big brain on a lot of things, and sometimes I'll watch something and she'll point out like, oh, this is based on this 1930s movie
Yeah.
about
Hmm.
an onion or something, uh, some
Yes, my
wild stuff.
favorite German expressionism film,
That's
Les.
right.
Les oignons, and then I'm very sci-fi heavy. Like
Yeah.
um, a lot of what I enjoy outside of Star Wars is still kind of set in or adjacent to space.
Mhm.
Okay.
Um, I don't know. I don't know why I land there, but things like Alien, Predator, Halo, um,
Hmm.
sci-fi is just my little corner of media that I enjoy. And so, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's such an interesting thing, I think, when you look at and dissect where our various passions and themes come from, the things that we're into, because of course I'm a dedicated Star Wars guy. I said to you guys the other night, anytime y'all have other stuff going on that may not be Star Wars, I always love opportunities to talk about things outside of Star Wars. I've been on with Michael, who's in the live chat, who hosts the Deucecast, and I've been on his show to talk about movies and other things that I also love. But it's interesting sometimes where the things we like you said, you have kind of a space vibe, like a lot of your stuff defaults to space. Boop has horror. She has, some of the other deeper arts, that kind of thing. For me, like, I love Star Wars, and that's my big number one spacey thing. I grew up with Star Trek because of my dad, and I have an appreciation for it. It's not necessarily my go-to, although I really do like the newer J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies.
Samesies.
But also some things that are supposed to be like Nerd Cred 101, and this is where I become very unpopular. Lord of the Rings doesn't do it for me. I've tried to read and watch those movies a lot of different times, and I don't care. Like, I'm not interested. It doesn't hold me. But I really enjoyed Game of Thrones. I really enjoy. So it's a weird, like, it's maybe not fantasy, but it maybe isn't. But like Indiana Jones and Back to the Future and Ghostbusters, like, I'm all in on those things. So, it's finding those avenues. And I think that's the other thing that your guys' show certainly pushes in a really great way, which is, like what you like, enjoy what you enjoy, have fun with it. And at the end of the day, go, that's fun. I like it. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're big proponents of chaotic positivity. And yes, Michael, I will be talking about Nicolas Cage for the next 20 minutes. Would you like to hear about the German Expressionism tribute of a movie that is Vampire's Kiss, 1989, starring Nicolas Cage?
What we're going to
Thanks,
have
Michael.
to do,
Thanks,
what
Michael.
we're going to have to do is we're just going to have to arrange an opportunity for Boop to be on the Deucecast with Michael so that they can both just spend an entire hour talking about, Nicolas Cage. Not that that's going to be enough time, but
The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is coming out soon. I'm
it is
just
coming
saying,
out.
and he's
That's
not
right.
going to come see it with me. I need someone to.
That's
I
right.
like The
That's
Rock.
gonna be
That's a
that's going
fine
to be a
movie.
Deucecast extra.
Oh yeah, but no,
Excellent.
I
Well,
mean
I love that. Yeah.
I was just gonna say you hit our motto on the head of just like what you like.
Mhm.
We try to make a space where no opinion is a wrong opinion, except a hurtful and
Absolutely.
spiteful one,
Mhm.
because that's not opinion. That's just a bad attitude.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that definitely sums up what we strive for with Nerdherder.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Vampire's
And
Kiss
it
is it like a curse of a film. I just have to say that. I'm just
That's right.
I'm
For
letting that
everybody
go for
listening
you
on the
all.
audio version, Michael and Boop are having their own side conversation right now about Nicolas Cage in the live
It's
chat. So,
listen.
but I think that's a great point, and I have said this for a long time. My version of that is in the Star Wars space, where Lord knows there's a lot of people crying and upset and angry about things that it's imaginary, and what are we really talking about? Um, but when it comes down to it, my go-to point is, if you're mad, why are you still here? Like, why do
Mm,
you hang out? I compare it all the time. It's like if you go to a restaurant that you think is really terrible, but you come back to that restaurant every day of the week and force yourself to eat there and pay for it and then scream and complain about it. Like, why are you doing this to yourself? If you
right.
don't
That sounds
like
like a
it,
you problem.
no one's forcing you to be here. I just
Yeah,
don't,
take
I
take
don't, I
take your
don't get it.
hand off of the stove. You have the power.
That's
Like,
right. You are allowed to not be here if you don't want to. There are things I dislike in Star Wars, but I'm not burning a couch in my front yard because it makes me angry. It's just not the way it works.
because that's unhealthy.
It is
That's right.
Alabama.
And my neighbor, well, it is Alabama. Cars, washing machines, whatever we burn in the yard. Um, so we're going to start to transition a little bit and to get into our Star Wars lane. We're digging into the Phantom Menace, and we're starting to talk about, or we're in our second chapter of our Phantom Menace canon study. So before we get to that, I do want to dig in a little bit for you guys with kind of a quick version of how, both of you came to Star Wars, and also first memories, first times of seeing Phantom Menace.
Well, I've talked about it on the podcast before, but I was not a capital F Star Wars fan for most of my life. I
Sure.
grew up watching the movies because my dad is a nerd. And we had the VHS tapes of the special editions right before the Phantom Menace came out, and we watched those on the weekends because that was just a thing that you did.
Hmm.
Because we're a family of nerds. Um, I did not watch the Phantom Menace until it was out on DVD,
Okay.
and I didn't have strong opinions about it for the first time. It was just another Star Wars movie. And then as I grew up and got on the internet, I was introduced to the idea that, oh, the Phantom Menace is bad. You should not watch the Phantom Menace.
People may not like this thing.
Exactly. And I embarrassingly let that decide for me how I felt about the Phantom Menace for a long time until I met someone who changed my opinion. We went to see The Force Awakens.
Mhm.
It was, I think, the first movie we went to see as a married couple, which is cute. And that was my
Yeah, I
first
think it was.
time. No, it was my second time seeing a Star Wars in theaters. My first time was, uh,
Revenge of the Sith.
thank you. Um, and seeing you just so full of joy at seeing a Star Wars is really what made me step back and think, like, okay, I think I need to give this another shot. I think I need to actually try and get what's so exciting this time. And so we watched all the movies together. We watched the Clone Wars together. And I found that I freaking love this series of movies. It's so much deeper than I thought in the first place
Right.
because I made an effort to, pay attention this time. And now I have a Star Wars podcast.
It's a slippery
And here
slope,
you
man.
are.
It really is. Yeah. And you know what? I am a better person for it.
Um, for me, like it's hard to remember exactly when like Star Wars was introduced. I just know it happened when I was at least 5. Um, and it was kind of game over from there. I would, as often as I could, watch the original trilogy over and over and over,
Mhm.
back to back, and just really loved it. And then, lo and behold, of course, found out that more are coming, and it ended up being for my birthday the year it came out. That was the big surprise. Was my mom was going to take me to see the new Star Wars. Because even
Wow.
at that age, I was obsessed with it. It had become a big part of my personality, and it I was already well in love with it, and so I think I just managed to, by ignorance, stay away from any negativity. I know I was too young, number 1, and number 2, I don't know, it was Star Wars. It was in theaters. It was amazing, and, um, I I shared on Twitter recently. I know probably no one here follows me, there, but I shared recently about how I'm obsessed with this Episode 1 branded Jabba the Hutt figure. It's one you put slime in and you squeeze his belly and he pukes up slime, and I'm obsessed with it because I bought that figure at the theater. For some reason, that was a thing back then. They sold
Mhm.
merchandise, and I bought that Jabba the Hutt there. And so, I've kind of made my life's mission about reacquiring that because it represents that memory, so well. And so, yeah, I mean, and same thing happened once we got that on VHS. I mean, I watched it on repeat as much as I could. I was actually telling a friend recently how I had a backpack that was modeled after Anakin's,
Mhm.
and I used to keep Star Wars figures, and I used to keep the Phantom Menace in that. And when I went over to friends' houses,
Nice.
if they would play video games or if they would do something, want to play outside, I'd say, "Hey, can I use your VCR?" And I'd put on the Phantom Menace for me, myself, and I.
Have you
Um,
have you heard the good news of our Lord and Savior, the Phantom Menace?
Right.
Exactly.
Um, and I think it was that. It was just a place to project all of this joy that this franchise and storytelling had given me at a young age. I was able to project it on this new fantastical thing, and the journey just continued from there. Where I mean, Attack of the Clones came out, same thing. I was obsessed with it. I loved it, and it keeps happening. Where I just love Star Wars. It's kind of never worn out on me, and I think it's because, and we'll talk more about it as we go through. I think it's just because it means so much to me. It's important to me, and you know, uh, kind of to wrap up, back when we talked about The Last Jedi, um,
Mhm.
I spent a lot of time emphasizing with our listeners, like, hey, this isn't going to be an episode to convince you to like The Last Jedi because I can't. The reasons I like The Last Jedi are deeply personal. The reasons
Sure.
I love every Star War and the characters that I do and all of this stuff are personal. It's tied deeply with me emotionally, and so I just can't bring myself not to enjoy those things.
Mhm. I think
So,
that's very, very well said. And I love that perspective because just like any other kind of art, like it's deeply personal or someone's spirituality or like so much of the world is personal. My experience is not your experience. Your experience is not her experience. Like we all have different approaches. Pete loves to say everybody has a different window or door into Star Wars.
absolutely.
What got his kid into it is not what got him into it, which is not what got you into it. We all have a different entry point and we're all spoken to in different ways. There are people who don't understand why I love Rebels as much as I do. And I'm one of those people who have seen a few episodes of Resistance, but haven't watched it yet. I'm going to, and I've resolved that I'm going to do it soon.
Good for you.
But
It's
like,
a good choice.
but there are, even with the prequels, I've said this many times and, Boop, you brought it up and it's a really great point. I was of that generation that saw it when it came out. I was halfway through college and had grown up with the original trilogy. And when the hype was real. I used the T1 connection in my dorm room to download the trailer and I waited till overnight because it had to be fully downloaded so it didn't buffer and, whatever. And that mall reveal in
Oh
that trailer
yeah.
just, blew our minds. And then I went and saw the movie and I went, what just happened there? Like it wasn't the thing I thought it was going to be. And I did spend some misinformed parts of my early 20s and early young adulthood going, that's not my Star Wars. I don't like, but I also didn't dwell on it. I just went, yeah, I don't recognize that. And I kept moving. Um, but I have also come back around to realize it is all a part of the bigger story. They are fun. I don't have to love them as much as I love Empire or Last Jedi. It's not required. I can just enjoy it or watch it. Or the more I watch it, I go, I kind of do love this dumb movie and the fish jokes and Jar Jar stepping in poop and, whatever else is happening. Those things. I just muted myself on accident trying to tell my
Whoop.
child good night.
So excited
Um,
about the Phantom Menace.
that's right. So excited about the Phantom Menace. But it doesn't have to be stuck that way. You get to make your choices. You get to choose what you go deep on, what you just enjoy, the way, it flows differently for everyone. And that's kind of the point that I'm finally circling back around to is it's deeply personal to everybody in different ways.
Yeah, and I mean, like your analogy of the art is a perfect example because, we live in a culture, especially with a microphone for everyone that wants one, where
Hmm.
people critique and review and tell you what to think. And if you don't form your own opinion, and if you don't have a conviction of your own, you'll allow them to give you one.
Exactly.
Um, and sometimes that's okay. Sometimes there is just a unanimous opinion, and sometimes no, that's just regurgitated. Sometimes
Right.
you do have to, and obviously this can apply to much more serious topics than Star Wars. But like that's a big urge of mine to people is to form your own opinions. If you come to the same conclusion on your own as the person next to you, that's fine. But if you just take their opinion so that you don't have to form
Yep.
one, you're kind of bowing out.
Well, and that speaks very much to me in
The clock is still ticking.
Oh no.
So at this point, whoop, and we lost him.
Uh-oh.
Sure, he'll jump back here in a second.
Absolutely. Hello, pig.
So if Vampire's Kiss is your first favorite Nicolas Cage movie.
I'd say it's one of many of my favorite Nicolas Cage movies.
Well, yeah, so that's the next. So what? So Vampire's Kiss is your Phantom Menace of Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
What follows? What are some of your other favorite Nicolas Cage moments?
I think Raising Arizona is fantastic. The
I don't know that
concept of Nicolas Cage stealing a baby is just
I will say I have realized recently that I don't know as many Nicolas Cage. I don't know the full spectrum of Nicolas Cage's library.
really.
So when I make my opinion, I'm making it based on what I have seen. So I mean, there's many a film that you can probably say the name of that Nicolas Cage is in. Don't know it, or
Face Off.
maybe I've heard of it and just haven't seen it.
I think Face Off is my second favorite, and then Mandy is my third, and then Raising Arizona. Con Air is also very good.
See, so like Vampire's Kiss and Face Off are two of the examples most often. I just don't think they're good at movies. Not even talking about Nicolas Cage. I think it's like the directing, the structure. Like I feel like they're just messy.
But it's fun to watch.
And I think the only thing carrying it is that Nicolas Cage is an over the top, interesting, quote unquote character.
Mhm.
Right? So it's just like it's a combination there. Like John Woo, I don't know, man. I'm
You don't
not
like Flocks of Doves?
I don't get it. I don't get it. He obviously did Mission Impossible 2, my least favorite Mission Impossible. I don't know, man. It's just those movies themselves, I think, are messy, so it's hard to even I can't even put that on Nicolas Cage, although I'm sure the directing and just letting him run loose is a lot of it for sure.
Do you know about his pyramid in New Orleans?
No.
Okay, so here's the thing. Nicolas Cage bought a famously haunted house in New Orleans that was owned by Madame Lalaurie.
There he is.
Hey, wow.
We just had an in-depth conversation about Nicolas Cage for like 5
I'm
minutes.
so glad you did. And hang on, I'm going to check something.
We saw the clock was still going, so we figured we'd.
Well, I'm glad you didn't leave because that might have.
I look forward to you coming back to this.
That might have canceled the whole thing if you had left. So hang on. If anybody's still watching with us, thank you for your patience.
Of course.
This is why
technology, man.
This is why I'm glad I get to edit some of these parts out.
Do you want me to finish the story?
Sure, yeah. Like what? While Nick checks on the stream.
Yeah. So Nicolas Cage bought this famously haunted house in New Orleans that was owned by Madame Lalaurie. That's the lady that owned a bunch of slaves, famous for human experimentation. She believed that rubbing the slave's blood on her skin would make her younger.
Ugh.
Yeah, disgusting.
Literally,
woman.
get out.
And so Nicolas Cage bought the house that she lived in, and he was having just awful bad luck. That's when he almost went to prison for tax evasion, which was his lawyer's fault. I'd like to point out. Then
I'm sure that's Wesley Snipes' excuse too.
Probably he went to a voodoo priestess and asked her, what can I do to get these bad spirits off of me? And she told him that he needs to buy a plot of land in a New Orleans cemetery and make that his grave plot. And he needs to have a pyramid made of quartz on top of his grave. And that would, make the spirits away from him. Yeah. He paid a lot of money for that.
I'm sure, but I'm sure he's also good for it.
Oh, he's fantastic for it. He's a good guy. I like Nicolas Cage.
What? Don't be so mean to Nicolas Cage, John. Just give the man room.
If any of this survives, you'll have me on record giving him a benefit of a doubt.
I like that. I like
It's
that.
out there.
Well, my favorite Nicolas Cage is Gone in 60 Seconds Nicolas Cage, which is not the
Very
most
good movie.
popular,
That's my mom's favorite movie.
but it's a
I was
good
gonna
one.
say,
It's
like
mostly
that.
because I want that car, but
Yes.
Oh, Eleanor, yeah.
and
Yeah.
Space Raylan Givens, Timothy Oliphant, as the detective in that movie alongside what's
go.
his name?
There you go.
Christopher Eccleston.
Yes. So I don't remember. I'm just going to pause for 1/2 a second so I know where I'm going to cut back into this.
Mhm.
But yeah, I went to a small private United Methodist college, and exactly like you're talking about, having the opportunity to ask questions for yourself, to ask and decide, is this why I like this? Am I liking this? Because somebody else told me to. I went to college with a bunch of people who grew up in very traditional evangelical conservative Southern religious upbringings. And so when they were challenged about things that related to their faith, to use the metaphor from the Bible, their houses were built on sand, not rocks, and they crumbled. They couldn't stand up to, well, why do you think it's like that? Well, the Bible says so. Where? I don't know, but it does. And, and then half the time they were telling you that the Bible says, cleanliness is next to godliness and other things that aren't actually.
It doesn't like when he talks about Jesus.
Apparently not. I think Satan might be living in StreamYard this evening.
Must be. This is podcasting worst nightmare for sure. I don't envy. Got to tell his kids to get off the TikToks. Using up all the Wi-Fi.
Get off the TikTok and go to bed, you dang kids.
There it went again.
Uh-oh. I just noticed that you put the tiny Lego Falcon in Han's poster.
Yeah.
That's adorable. I love you so much.
All Falcons welcome.
We literally have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many more?
6, 7, 8,
We have 8 Millennium Falcons.
9.
We have 9 Millennium Falcons.
we have a problem.
You are a man.
I don't know why,
who
because
owns
like
9 Millennium Falcons.
none of these were given, or none of these were consensual. Like I didn't ask for I didn't ask for these Falcons. I didn't take these Falcons. They were given, and I guess it's just because that's like the Star Wars ship.
Yeah.
And so, and I mean, I don't mind any of it. The best Falcon is a given Falcon rather than a bought one.
Or a one.
That's true. Yeah, because like I wouldn't purchase the Falcons we own. Like it's not my favorite ship. I wouldn't necessarily feel compelled to it. But that's what does make it special is they're all gifts. So I like them not because they're the Falcon. I like them because they're gifts.
I like your Y-wing with the scale model of a man. It's a good one.
Yeah.
It just shows it's not a very big ship.
I mean, it's as big as a fighter jet.
Yeah. It's a good size ship, but it's not dramatically large like a B-wing.
No, well, in the Falcon, yeah, well, fair. Well, the B-wing's not enormous. It's just long.
Like I said, it's just drama. That's where you keep the drama in the B-wing.
Yeah. And I mean, so much of ships are just what makes them work. I mean, that's like jets. The only reason they have to be the size they are is so that they can operate.
Mm-hmm.
And Star Wars ships are the same way. I mean, except for the function. So like the Falcon is huge, but it's for the role that it plays.
Okay, hi buddy.
Hi.
You're gonna have so much interesting footage of us.
Well, I can't wait to see what comes out on the other side. Like this is very strange, and it's strange because what I don't understand is what's happening because I texted from my phone, even though my phone is not connected to the Wi-Fi in my house. It's just on its signal, and those sent as plain text messages, not blue iPhone mess. Like Something's weird here tonight. So we're going to try this one more time. And if we get jacked up again, we'll come up with a backup plan and do the second half of this soon.
Okay.
I don't know. It's very strange. It's just,
You're
I
doing
even
you're
went in the
doing your
house.
best, buddy.
You're doing
I
great.
even went in the house to make sure that people inside weren't just like pushing buttons on routers or things. So I don't know. So we're going to do this. We're going to transition into our canon study now, and we're going to talk about, no, we're not. I'm just kidding. Hold on.
Oh,
Give me a cut. Give me a cut. I forgot to ask an important question. One other question that I love to ask my guests, because this is a show that treats Star Wars like a sacred text, we kind of follow some pseudo-religious themes. I love finding out from my guests if they have had a Star Wars spiritual experience. And I always kind of couch this, I always kind of describe it as a time when Star Wars meant something more, hit you in a bigger or deeper way. It could be an actual experience. It could be a first time seeing it, something you got. There's a lot of different ways that this can go. And like we were discussing, because these kinds of things are so intensely personal, everybody's answers are different. So I don't care which one of you wants to go first, but I'm asking each of you, do you have, or can you put your finger on what is your Star Wars spiritual experience?
I'm gonna let you go first
okay.
because I don't want to have the same answer as you.
You won't. I guarantee. If you want to, oh, you want to go first. Trust me.
Okay.
It's gonna be
Um,
hard to follow me. I'm just saying.
yeah. I'll say like when I became a Star Wars fan,
Mm-hmm.
I I certainly had a lot of moments that got me emotionally, like Five's death and that whole episode arc in the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment that I started loving all of Clone Wars in general, I already liked it, but it was just kind of another show, was Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order.
Mm-hmm. Huge.
Because that was a moment where I saw what I was personally going through summed up in a character moment. That was when I went from liking Ahsoka as a character, thinking, "Oh, she's a cool little bad A character. She's so cute. She runs around, she snips."
Yep.
I went from that to seeing myself represented in a
Mm-hmm.
character and feeling everything that she was feeling in that moment and fully relating to her.
I love that so much. That's
That
so
was it.
exactly what we said. That's so intensely personal. That's so
Yeah.
journey specific. I really, really do love that.
Yeah. Someday I'll probably talk about it more, but for right now, we're not going to pick at that scab.
Totally
That's
fair. I
yeah. That
appreciate you being willing to share that.
Of course.
then that's okay. Props. I was thinking you were gonna go somewhere with Maul, and
No.
then yeah, like
We talked about that
I
on Friday.
yeah, and that's kind of the roundabout ways of your personality for sure. Are Maul and Ahsoka.
I don't know
So
if it'll come up on camera, but literally my lock screen is the Uzuri art of Maul and Ahsoka.
beautiful stuff.
It's fantastic.
For me, like I said, I've always really loved Star Wars. So, and I don't know, I have tons of nostalgic memories and everything, but I don't remember the moment that began or anything like that. It's just always been something I loved. And, but the time that it took it even further, which was astounding to me just because I thought I loved it as much as I could love it, was, 2018 when we started this podcast. Um, as I kind of alluded to introducing ourselves, like we began this out of a need to feel joy and to wrap ourselves in something we loved and that would bring us a lot of positivity. And that was because in 2018, my mom passed away
Okay.
and surprising. And I mean, it's a loss of a loved one. You never really know, but
Sure.
definitely took us by surprise. And the whole world kind of ended for me. I was at a very dark place and very lost, and the reason we needed that joy was because of that. We needed something that could make us kind of at first of all distract us from what was going on, and to remind us of the good things that still existed. We by that point built so many memories of our own on Star Wars, and so we had tons of stuff, tons of experiences to talk about and everything. And um, we knew that we could always enjoy a good Star Wars conversation. And so,
Yeah.
Rinky Dink Podcast was born. And
Yeah.
if you go back and listen to our pilot, it's hot garbage.
Ooh.
Um, it's just it's the simplest form of us just sitting in front of a microphone having a conversation about
Yeah.
Star Wars. But it's
Mhm.
also the most pure thing, and the door that is opened, um, not even name dropping opportunities that it's given us, but just the emotional opportunities, the emotional levity, the relationships, and the greater memories that it's given us took Star Wars to be something so much more. And so, kind of like I said before, with The Last Jedi, I love it deeply and personally. And the reason why something Faken in space matters so much to me is because it reminds me of my childhood. It reminds me of
Sure.
great times with my mom. Reminds me of
Mhm.
great times with my partner. It just reminds me of good times, and I continue to make more good times with good people because of it. And that's more special than a movie to me.
Yeah.
And so,
Without a
yeah,
doubt.
Literally.
It becomes, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, literally, the podcast was born after we had a 7-hour car ride the entire time talking about Palpatine
yeah,
and the implications of Palpatine.
yeah. Like that. We were driving back, the first time we were going back to my mom's place to kinda deal with things, and the
Sure.
distraction we had was Star Wars
Yeah.
conversation and about Palpatine and Order 66.
Mhm.
And that's what got us through the car ride and that experience, oddly enough. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's incredibly powerful, and that's very special, and I thank you for sharing that because
yeah,
that's it, the thread that we've hit on so far running through this is just how deeply personal Star Wars can be, fandom can be, the things that we love are the things that are the most personal to us. And I think that both of your moments speak exactly to that same thing. It's very personal. And that's why I love getting to ask that question. And I've added that question probably through Return of the Jedi. So I've asked that question to 6 or 8 or 9 guests at this point, and every single answer has been different, and every single answer has been deeply personal and very unique. And very unique is kind of redundant, but you know where I'm going.
yeah.
It is that thing that makes it so special, and I appreciate that in both of your answers.
Absolutely. It's beautiful to get to highlight that and whatnot, and appreciate you for opening up that opportunity because, getting to peel back on those things and have those kinds of
Hmm.
conversations and put that in the ears of fans that then think about their own reasons and experiences, like,
Yep.
that's what really spreads the positivity and really makes the community. So that's awesome.
I love that. That's really cool. Well, we are going to transition into the canon study itself because I know you guys have some thoughts. I know that you guys probably
Oh, so many
watched the
thoughts,
clip
always.
so many times, had some things that stood out, things that you want to talk about. So for anybody that's listening, the clip, our sacred text for the evening, is about the 20-minute mark to right about the 40-minute mark, 40 minutes and 30 something seconds, I believe. And basically our clip starts with as the as the bongo goes into that last cave underwater before
Mhm.
it pops out in the lake in Naboo. It starts there and then it ends right at the transition where Qui-Gon's talking to Obi-Wan on the radio, and then it wipes to the shot of Coruscant, and I think Emperor's talking to Maul, and that kind of opens up the next part. One of the things that I did, so what we get in between there, just as the briefest of probably not super accurate recaps, we get the rescuing the queen from the occupying forces. We get Padme, being rescued by Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Jar Jar. We get meeting Anakin. We get Watto. We get a plan hatched for how we're going to get the parts to fix the ship so that they can get out of Tatooine. Actually, we do get them going to Tatooine, I believe,
Hmm.
um, in the opening little part. So, the escape, all that kind of stuff is what we get in these moments. Now, I haven't done this before, but it occurred to me right before we got started tonight, I wanted to see what was the first line of dialogue for this section and what was the last line of dialogue for this section. And so I wrote them down, and the literal first line of dialogue for our sacred text tonight was the battle droid saying, "Viceroy, we have captured the queen."
Victory.
Which, of course, yes, victory, with the, slightly uncomfortable accent.
A little bit.
And then the last line is Qui-Gon talking to Obi-Wan on his little walkie-talkie thing, and he says, "I'm afraid we're running out of time." And I don't know if every section going forward is going to be that good. I'm going to try it out and see with first line, last line, but that was a perfect first line, last line that encapsulates these 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
We've captured the queen, and I'm afraid we're running out of time. Like, that really did open up, a lot in between there. So let's do this. I'm going to throw it over to the two of you. Our first question is, what is our text telling us? And I always say this is kind of the literal interpretation of these minutes of our sacred text. What are the things that you're literally taking away from seeing these 20 minutes?
I think there's a lot of character work being done in these 20 minutes, not just with, our main characters, but also with our scenery in general. Like, we get to see more of Naboo. Absolutely gorgeous. I forget where that palace is, but oh my gosh.
It's like Italy or Spain or
Italy.
something. Like,
Yeah, it's in Italy.
beautiful
Gorgeous.
place.
But I love seeing the Naboo Palace courtyard so much. It's gorgeous.
Yes.
We're also getting another look at the sheer number of battle droids, which is important. The Federation, not the Federation.
Yeah.
The Separatists
Yeah.
would have won on numbers alone. Like, that is
Yes.
something that blows my mind every single time. Like, they were able to overtake almost an entire planet with droids.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy to think about. We're sowing the seeds of war in general. Like, this is the first invasion of the Clone Wars, if you
Right.
want to think about it that literally. And also, we just get some good character moments with Sabe and Padme.
Mm.
Like,
Yes.
"We are brave, Your Highness." That is an
Mhm.
excellent line and
So
such
good.
great communication that was expounded upon by E.K. Johnston.
Mm-hmm.
So good. That's all that kind of pops out to me right now.
Yeah.
Feel free to fill in.
Yeah, for me, I don't know if this is expressed literal.
Sure.
It kind of hits me as literal in this instance, but
Mhm.
like the whole thing throughout this 20 minutes, oddly enough, is nothing is as it seems,
Yes.
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Like if Phantom Menace as a whole had to be encapsulated in a line, I think there's always a bigger fish, but and these moments from the get-go, the queen swap as they're escaping,
Right.
the invasion being a ploy for greater war,
Mhm.
Qui-Gon as the refugee on Tatooine, all of these things are misleading plot points. They're
Yeah.
deceptions and unreliable narrators for the story that's actually happening, which is it folds into the main topic of the Phantom Menace, in that this whole political game,
Mhm.
Senator Palpatine, all of that stuff. The Jedi are not what they seem to be, and so I think this 20 minutes is a very dense encapsulation of a good bit of that, and I think that's the most forward way to take some of these instances outside of just the Jedi's coming to the rescue and everything. I mean,
Mhm.
Mhm.
Jar Jar's, and I know he kind of introduces prior to this, but Jar Jar is the epitome of not being what he seems. He's actually very useful,
Mhm.
very helpful, and very kind. R2, well put together little droid. He's not
Yes.
Mhm.
just a mechanic. He's more than he seems, and the real savior of the galaxy for sure.
100%. They
Yes.
would have never made it to Tatooine without R2.
Yeah.
For
So
sure.
like for me, like when I was thinking of this as a literal thing, I was thinking of what I don't have to use much brain power to kind of
Mhm.
get out of it,
Absolutely.
and that was the first thing that struck me. Not like ever before, really. And I think that's what's good about stuff like this is watching it with a purpose kind of reveals new perspectives.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, that was what jumped out to me.
Yeah, we also get the world's best pickup line, which is,
Are you an
Are you an angel?
yes.
I did write that down in my just literal, the things that I was picking up. One thing that stood out to me, and of course I've noticed it before because the absolutely breathtaking costuming set in that palace, set in like it stood out to me more this time than I've ever watched it. And like you said, JD, looking at things, 20 minutes at a time and looking for, using some guiding questions to seek deeper meaning, to seek, what, like, I don't know if you've ever listened to Star Wars Minute, but those guys, they do the movies 1 minute at a time. And I love it. And it's so silly sometimes. It's so whatever. But like when you take anything 1 minute at a time, like you can really unpack something and you go, I didn't realize there was that much stuff in 1 minute. We're not doing that. But in this, for me, the two things that stood out in very stark juxtaposition was, you said it already, the invasion is happening. And we have Padme looking out the window, but we get the pan back wide shot of her in that gown with the glowing orbs at the bottom. And I wrote down the queen in isolation. She's standing there watching out the window as this invasion is happening to her people and to her country, notably peaceful people. Her ship doesn't have weapons on it. Like they do have, some guns and some, the fighters and whatever. But like as a general rule, they're a peaceful people and this invasion is happening. And so to me, the juxtaposition of that beauty and also this isolated queen, while you're seeing, like you said, Boop, just millions of droids, piling down the streets. And we find out eventually they're kind of ineffective and not that great.
Yeah.
But,
great against security volunteers, apparently, though.
Exactly.
Volunteers. They have a volunteer, security force.
Naboo
So.
is the Tennessee of Star Wars.
God,
You heard it
no,
here
is
first.
not.
That's right.
That's
That may
lived in
have to be the
Tennessee.
clip that opens the episode. Naboo is the Tennessee of Star Wars. But to me, that juxtaposition stood out in isolation in the face of that invasion.
Like it's funny how, as you say that, I think of the sort of parallel and illustration that the invasion of Naboo has for just the overall evil invading on the piece of the galaxy that's happening. Because when you think of Jedi with elegant weapons, peaceful, law keepers and everything like that, and the dark side like swooping in on that, this is very much the lived in and real experience of what the dark side moving in on the light looks like, I think.
Right.
And it is also strange that in a very like Naboo's certainly elegant. I wouldn't necessarily say like the most technologically advanced, but it is interesting that they're overtaken with technology because George was very obsessed with that.
And that was going to be the other thing that I thought stood out to me. And I've thought about it before, but it stood out to me more today than it has in the past, which is exactly what you said. We've talked about where they shot this in Italy and how it's lush and green and beautiful. And these costumes are warm. And you've got all these brown, warm, friendly, colors juxtaposed with the hard, clanky metal of all the droids, all the tanks, all the everything. And that creates that very black and white, one versus the other kind of scenario. The other thing that I wrote down, and there's lots of other little things, but I always love when I see this, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan gives us old detective and young cop partner vibes.
Yes.
Like Qui-Gon is definitely the Danny Glover in this situation. He's like, I'm too old for this. This is what we're doing. And, Obi-Wan he's cocky. He's the Padawan. He's, there's lots of kicking. There's lots more kicking in this movie than I remembered, especially kicking the metal droids and that kind of thing.
You got those great boots. You got to use them.
I would say if you got the boots, you got to show them off. But I do love the old cop, young cop dynamic that, they put out. And like you said, you talked about Jar Jar. And at the same time, there's a line, and I think it's farther down, maybe in the next set of minutes, when Qui-Gon goes back for Anakin and he says, Obi-Wan says, why do I feel like we've picked up another, what does he call him?
Pathetic life form.
Pathetic life. Yeah. And you're just like, Obi-Wan was kind of a dick. Like, what is his deal? But
Yeah.
he's young and he's a punk and he's still learning his place. And my favorite part of that dynamic is at the end in the lightsaber battle with Maul, when they're all between the little energy barriers and you get to see the three of them, juxtaposed against one another. Because those are character moments. And so
Yeah.
obviously that's farther down the line, but I love that that's set up in this early part of the movie with the difference in their personalities. They walk into the hangar. We're going to need those pilots. Obi-Wan's like, I got this. I'm fine. And he goes to do that while Qui-Gon has a useless, conversation with the droid who gets chopped in half.
I love that whole bit. The droid searching for a response is like one of my favorite. Like, you're under arrest.
Does not compute.
Yeah. That's definitely, and it kind of came up when we were talking about Star Wars Rebels when we had you on Friday.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I think it's kind of mentally I'm preparing for the Kenobi show that's coming out in a couple of months, that I'm like so fine-tuned observant to Obi-Wan, and for some reason, especially in the Phantom Menace, the starkness of the very streetwise Jedi Qui-Gon
Right.
with the very staunch and rule-driven Obi-Wan has really been standing out. And so much like you said, we ended up having quite a conversation ourselves about later moments and how their perspectives are so different. How Obi-Wan seems almost bothered by the world around him, whereas Qui-Gon's kind of fascinated by it.
Yeah, he's
Right.
just having a good time for the most part.
Yeah.
Like, he's just experiencing it a moment at a time, and that leads him to being a more compassionate and empathetic person, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that creates an interesting dynamic that we get with Obi-Wan post Qui-Gon as we move down the line, whether we've seen him in animation, whether we see him with Anakin in 2 and 3, but like Obi-Wan becomes the guy that's like, you go do the work, I'm gonna be at the bar having a drink. And I've loved that about Obi-Wan. Like, he's the guy that's like, I'm going to get a drink. You're going to go find out what's going on here. Like, there's a dynamic. And when we see him in New Hope, he comes in and he goes to the bar. Like, yeah, we're going to go to a bar. That's where things happen.
Yeah.
He becomes the, but with also still the kind of problematic, certain point of view aspects. And, there's still some flaws in Obi-Wan that, don't make him unlikable, but maybe reveal possibly, and this is us just going way off the deep end here, but possibly where his development stopped in the trauma of losing his master the way he did. And so he didn't get the full Qui-Gon experience. He didn't get the full, Qui-Gon to completion training mode. I don't know. That's just off the top of my head.
We were talking about that recently, even because fans focus so much that the duel of the fates is Anakin's fates.
Right.
But I think it's plural fates for a reason. It's a domino effect, and Obi-Wan suffered for not having his master. Yeah, he was about to be knighted, but if any of us have an accountability partner or mentor relationship, we know the value of having someone, even when we become self-sustaining adults, still having that line of communication back to someone important to us. And so losing Qui-Gon definitely changed things, but I love how you point out, he, like, by the time of A New Hope, he's kind of learned a thing or two. And so, yeah, good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, in that, that transitions us into our second question. And our second question is, what is the text asking of us? And so for me, if the first question is kind of the literal interpretation, the second question is, what is the inspirational interpretation? What are you being inspired? How are you being inspired by these minutes? What are the things that you see that are giving you, some sort of guidance or kind of having a deeper meaning?
I think in these moments, we're being asked to pay attention. You think that you know the story. Like, we all know, like, the story of Darth Vader. He was a Jedi, like me. He was killed by Darth Vader. Like, we think that we know who Darth Vader is. We think, and we also think that we know who Anakin Skywalker is by proxy, because we see him at the end of Return of the Jedi. We know who he is. It's that old guy standing next to Obi-Wan.
Sebastian Shaw.
Exactly. Thank you. I forgot his name. I'm a
Okay.
bad fan.
No,
I'm a great fan.
you are. I'm a
Thank you.
fan. Sorry.
Woof woof woof. Yeah. We think that we know who Anakin Skywalker is, but this is really
Sure.
turning that on its head and confronting us with the fact that we don't know the story.
Mm.
Mhm.
That story was probably conceptualized, but it wasn't written at that time when
Right.
Sebastian Shaw showed up.
Mhm.
Eh. So this is George's story, and it's being told the way that George wanted to tell it. And it starts with a little boy in a junk shop with really nothing too extraordinary about him, other than the fact that
Mhm.
he's extremely force sensitive and can fix any droid, but that's beside the point. You know what? Don't worry too much about it.
And he's
Um,
clearly never seen an angel before.
Right.
exactly. I think they're from the moods of EO, I've heard.
Yeah.
Whatever. I've heard the deep space pilots talking about them.
That's right.
And I think that's incredibly important of, step back. You think you must unlearn what you have learned, to
Yes.
quote Yoda.
Mhm.
This is going to be wildly out of your expectations, and that's okay. Step back and learn something for once.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think like what's really big about that, and I don't know that I've thought that much about it until you talk about it like that. But um, I think the point being made in that instance, not necessarily in these 20 minutes, is anybody can be Darth Vader. Like we think
Hmm.
that
Right.
he is just the epitome of evil, but he started as someone. Everyone
Mhm.
starts as someone and could be the next Darth Vader if you
Yeah.
make the wrong choice. If you
Mhm.
like, if you don't watch yourself and your character and everything. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, I really love that.
Shmi even says he knows nothing of greed.
Yeah,
Mhm.
In that moment,
I latched onto that this time for some reason, like
yeah,
because greed undoes him. Like
exactly.
Right.
we have literally this most innocent child who becomes the most,
Mhm.
the killer of innocence, at
Mhm.
the height of his power and everything.
It
Right.
really makes you think, if they had just left him on Tatooine, would things have unfolded the way that they did? He would have been just another kid on
Right.
Tatooine. Watto probably would have lost him in another gambling match.
Mhm.
He, he could have been raised so differently.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
mean, and especially, I mean, obviously, you have this underlying faith component to kind of how you illustrate things with this and everything. And there's people that lose their mind obsessing over, does God mean all of the things that happen and everything? And what does it mean if the answer is yes? What does it mean if that, like, all of Anakin's story was meant to happen?
Hmm.
I-
Right.
it's tough stuff to chew on. I think I have the mellow mind of it, of it happened, like,
Mhm.
and what I get out of these 20 minutes inspirationally kind of ties to how I feel about that, of like, it happened, we've got to make the most of it, right?
Right.
Um, I really stand out in the latter half of this when they do get to Tatooine and everything, and Qui-Gon kind of zeroes in on, we've got to get to Coruscant, right? Like,
Right.
this is our objective. We've got to go about it this way. And then he meets this kid and it derails everything,
Mhm.
and that, like, pontification moment he has at the dinner table of, I didn't come to free slaves, but what if this leads to this? What if
Right.
being present, what if being in this moment in the small way affects the big picture?
Mhm.
Um, and that's kind of what I really ran with in that Star Wars is really, we see the big moments. We see the Death Star exploding. We see, the armies going at it, and we see great victories. But behind every one of those, if you really pay attention, what's interesting is there's some personal battle going on,
Hmm.
right?
Mhm.
Um, there's the big, great space battle up there, but the personal battle, as we've kind of already highlighted, is for the fate of this child.
Mhm.
right? In episode 3, yeah, there's this great political scheme being executed, but there's also just again the soul of this innocent boy to
Mhm.
man that Obi-Wan's trying to reach out to. Luke is trying to save his father.
Yeah.
Rey is trying to, dethrone her lineage. Like there's all of these small stories happening in the big picture. And if we're not careful, we can want to win the war and lose
Yeah.
battles.
There
That's right.
Um,
was there was something so important about the beginning of The Last Jedi, focusing in on Paige Tico.
mm,
Like,
Yes.
yes, there is a battle being fought, but we need to look
yeah.
at Paige right now because
Hmm.
the meat of Star Wars is in the minutia. Like you said,
Yep.
it can get lost in such deep political intrigue and war happening.
hmm
But when you lose a single tree in a forest, the world is worse for it.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
Absolutely. And
exactly.
and so yeah, I
Well, and I
think.
think that illustrated so well at the end of Last Jedi with Broom Boy. And
Mm,
Mhm.
for, all the jokes and all the whatevers that people tried to make of that moment, like, I am Broom Boy. I'm the kid that took a flashlight outside as a
exactly.
kid, shine it up into the air and let the stuff flying around in the sky be the lightsaber blade. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's of course Last Jedi. I don't know how I'm going to get through 6 episodes of canon study when I get to Last Jedi. It's going to have to be like 100 because I could go on for a disgusting amount of time.
We
But
could
so
too. I
much
hope
of
I hope we'll be invited for that as well.
so
Please.
so much of the meta narrative of that movie speaks to even the things we're talking about right now. And I
Mm,
was going to
Mhm.
borrow another one from the sequel trilogy as you're talking about, these small moments and, you have a big war, but you have the soul of Anakin and how that affects so many other things. In the sequel trilogy, we get the spark that ignites the fire. Like
mhm.
that's what we're talking about, which brings me back to, because I had the same inspirational kind of interpretive moments that you guys did for this part of it. And what it brought to my attention was, do you remember, of course, the poster blew everybody's mind because we
Yeah.
had little kid Anakin standing in the desert with the shadow of Darth Vader against that
Mhm.
wall.
Ex
But do you remember what the tagline on the poster was?
Every saga has a beginning. Is that the
Every
one?
saga has a beginning, yes.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. It starts with a little kid. And so my inspirational
Yes.
takeaway moment was, and I say this to my kids all the time, I've said it on the show all the time, like, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know where people have come from. And that doesn't excuse the horrible things that they may do, but we're all informed by our trauma. We're all informed by the things we've been through. You guys talked about it with your spiritual Star Wars moments. We're all in a group chat on a Discord server where we've been talking about these kinds of things earlier today
Mhm.
and talking about the things that we've been through, experiences that we've had that form us, that shape us and create, whether, we're just the people we are in our daily lives or if we become the masked guy with a lightsaber that, slaughters thousands. Like it all
Mhm.
comes from somewhere. And I love the inspirational moment of remembering there's humanity buried in the middle of all these different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love you pointing that out, that there is a beginning to everything.
Hmm.
And we would be remiss if we did not mention the most important woman in Star Wars on International Women's Day, Shmi
Yes, please.
Skywalker.
Absolutely.
Shmi Skywalker is the crux. She is the
Hmm.
fulcrum to all of Star
She,
Wars
she
coming
is
afterwards.
the actual fulcrum.
Absolutely.
She is one of the best mothers in all of Star Wars as well.
Hmm.
And what I love so much about her character is the fact that she knows Anakin's special. She
Right.
knows that something about him is incredibly important. She knows that he had an unusual conception and birth, but that didn't matter because that's her son.
Yep.
That's the only thing to her that really matters. And she loves
Hmm.
him no matter what.
And I
And
think
she
that's
lets him
something
go.
that shapes
Exactly.
a lot of Anakin's future
Yes.
is um, prior to the last 5 minutes of this movie and the remaining two sequels, he's just a boy.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
every instance after this, he's the chosen one, and
Mm-hmm.
He was always Annie to her. He was always Anakin to Qui-Gon. And yeah, he believed him to be the chosen one, but he also just believed in him.
Right.
And I think that's a big difference too. And obviously outside of the realm of these things, but just you talking about Shmi kind of leads me to that point of just, how labels and perception matter. And if we're not careful, eventually shape us
Mm-hmm.
the way they did Anakin.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, and I think to come back to your point, Boop, with the line that she says, and you brought it up earlier, he gives with no thought of himself.
Mhm.
She turns around and does the same thing. She
Yeah.
lets her special kid, the only thing she has in this world because she's a slave, and she lets him go. Like she
Mm,
Mhm.
gave because she knew that's what she was supposed to do. Whether she was felt good about it, whether she was happy about it, of course she was upset. Of course she was, but she did it because that's also the love that a parent has for a child, the
Yeah.
sacrificial love to go, this sucks for me, but if it's going to be good for them, of course I'm going to do it.
yeah.
Rewatching, jumping ahead, because like I told you guys before we came on air, I have a hard time stopping in the section that I'm supposed to stop at for the week at hand. I just let it keep going and I keep watching. And so I got into the next part where he wins the pod race and he comes back and he's got the credits and, hey, Watto's freed you. And Qui-Gon has to break. He's like, but just you.
Mm,
Mhm.
She's not free. And of course she has to be strong and brave and put on the face and, this is good.
Yeah.
And then that goodbye, when she tells him goodbye in that courtyard and he goes with Qui-Gon, like, kills me as a parent. Like, what are we doing here?
Dude,
yeah.
I will never not cry at the line, "Don't look back."
Don't look back. I mean, it's just, and it's so good. So I track completely with both of you as far as my inspirational moments, which focus around seeing the humanity behind, there's an origin. We all come from a place and, recognizing that and being able to use that hopefully can inform our path going forward. So speaking of our path going forward, the final question is, what is the text where is the text send us from here? I'm sorry. And so for me, that is the
Mhm.
practical application part of
Mm.
this. Looking at these 20 minutes, what is the thing that you can each kind of take away from this that you're going to be able to somehow apply to the way you approach the world, the way you approach other people? What is your practical takeaway from our text?
That was such a dramatic turn.
Dun
Um,
dun. Mhm.
I think one of the best lines in that dinner scene is, "You always say nobody ever helps each other."
Yep.
And that is such a Mr. Rogers thing to point out because, like, look for the helpers.
Look for the
yeah.
And
helpers. That's
when
it.
you become an adult, you become a helper.
Mm,
If we all, want to be, and we should all want to be the person who knows nothing of greed, who gives without
Right.
thinking of ourselves. It doesn't always turn out that way,
sure.
but that should be the intention of our
Agree.
lives. And I think
Absolutely.
that is one of the biggest lessons that we can learn from that dinner scene is number 1,
Mm-hmm.
just stop stealing apples. It's it's
Keep your
just
tongue in your
not
mouth.
exactly. Don't do that again. But also look for opportunities to not only be helpful, but be helpful in a way that benefits other people, not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
yeah. Like, what's funny is that, watching for this, how much it struck me of like he just really likes pod racing. So like the
Yeah.
win for him is getting to pod race. Like
Right.
having an excuse to just do something he
Mhm.
enjoys. And
Mm-hmm.
it just turns out that by doing something he enjoys, he can maybe help people.
It's a very
And that's just,
9-year-old kid thing.
it's so adorable.
It's
Yeah.
such a kid thing.
He's not even thinking about the credits that maybe could buy their freedom or anything. Like he's
Right.
just, but mom, I love it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
want a pod race.
Yeah.
Um, I love that. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, for me, it's an odd little thing. Of obviously all the other thoughts I've had on the moments prior to this and in this 20-minute span. it's really just one line that Qui-Gon has, after the first failed attempt at getting the new hyperdrive.
Hmm.
He's talking to Obi-Wan, and they're weighing their options, things they could sell and whatnot, but it just doesn't look like it's going to pan out. And Qui-Gon just says, "I'm sure another opportunity will present itself." And
Yep.
I think that that's another one of those like underlying motifs of this movie that can kind of get added to the stack of there's always a bigger fish. Things aren't
Hmm.
always what they seem, and other opportunities will always present themselves. They
Hmm.
definitely don't work out the way you think, and the queen might not always approve, but they will present themselves.
Right.
And that's what kind of steers in that direction of like we were just coming off of that's what steers Qui-Gon to consider the small scale of this big scale issue.
Hmm.
Consider this child and helping him and him helping me. Like, it's the idea of this is the opportunity. And I think we can all benefit from a little optimistic perspective in our
Hmm.
lives. We may often feel like we're ready. We found the junk dealer, we found the hyperdrive. Now here's my Republic credits, and that just doesn't work. Um, all right, what now? Because all my eggs were in this basket, and so I know at least one time a day I feel like that. I feel like I'm getting told off by Watto, and so
I'm about to die.
yeah, mind tricks don't work on me. Only money.
Don't work on me.
So many bad accents, but I can't not unhear them.
But that doesn't mean that we're not going to try and do all of them ourselves.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So yeah, so like kind of trying to model that for myself in those instances of, hey, you know what? Another opportunity. Because things are always in motion, to steal something from Yoda. Things are always moving, and opportunities are always possible. And if we get too locked in into one perspective, we might miss a better opportunity, another
Right.
opportunity. And so I think that's the thing that really struck me this time.
Yeah.
I really like that. And I think that I love that idea. And that certainly factors into the way I feel like I live my life in a lot of ways. Like I can't get hung up in the what ifs of down the road at the
Mm.
expense of losing out on the things that I'm dealing with right now or the moments, that I have with my wife and with my kids. We're not going to worry about the future at the expense of missing out on where we are right now and the fun we get to have.
Exactly.
We can all, catastrophize our life and figure out a million ways why it could go wrong. And in the process of doing that, we miss the here and now.
Mm.
So I
Exactly.
certainly see that and try to live my life in a pseudo responsible adult way that honors that, but also makes the decisions I'm supposed to at the time I'm supposed to. But I also think for me as well, my big kind of practical takeaway lines up a little bit more with what you said, Boop, which is little things make a big difference. Whether it's
Yeah.
Anakin, obviously Anakin makes a different big difference farther down the road that turns out to be
Yeah.
traumatic and bad and whatever. But in this instance, he makes a big difference in winning the pod race, which was great for him and his ego, not ego, his joy and wonderment, feeling of helping, what he does to get the parts, all that kind of stuff that get them and get these heroes and characters farther down the line in their journey. But you've also got R2. And we talked about R2 earlier. And R2
Mm.
is one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars.
Yeah.
He was just a service droid. Like the other 5 that got knocked off the top of that ship, as nobody thought twice about, crap, we lost another droid. But
Mhm.
he was the one that made it through, did his job, came in, got recognized, and it was a little thing. These were very utilitarian service and they're droids. Like we talk so much because in Star Wars, we give personality to droids. And of course they create droids with personality like 3PO and BB-8 and K2 and L3. Like all the droids we love have big personalities because they're put there. But if we really think about it in the context of that universe, like it's like if you're like, oh, I was really fond of that vacuum cleaner. Like it really, had a personality and like it did its job. And when it died, we threw it away and bought a new one. Like that's the
Mhm.
way these things were perceived. So R2 has a little thing that did a big thing. And then of course we know opens up, and I love to say he becomes the speaker of the dead for this entire Skywalker saga. He is
Yeah.
the carrier of the message and the vision, and his memory's never wiped. And I could write an essay on him starting with Leia in 4 and ending with Leia at the end of 9. Like, that's what it's all about. He's there
Yeah.
where he's supposed to be, telling the story, chronicling the life of Leia, and just all that. So for me, that's a very long-winded, because I don't do anything quickly when it comes to words, of saying the little things make a big difference, and we have to stop and allow that. And as a father, I have 4 little things living in my house who are turning into big things, and I know they're going to do big things. And so it's my job and responsibility to figure out, how do I set them up to be able to do that as best I can? How do I give them the tools they need? How do I get out of my way or their way of trying to tell them this is how you're supposed to do it, but setting them up? And this goes back to what we said before too, about what you like. Like what you like because you asked questions and figured it out, not because I told you this is the thing you like.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm setting these little things up to go out into the world equipped with the tools to ask questions and make smart decisions, not to go out there and go, well, I'm supposed to do this because my dad said so. That's not how life works. And that's not, the way it goes. I want to be helpful. I want to be the Qui-Gon, but, time will tell.
Very true.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up, this has been such a fantastic conversation, and I
Oh,
appreciate
so
you
good.
guys digging into this text with me. I love doing
Yeah.
these studies this way. Are there any other just kind of parting thoughts about our text in these 20 minutes? Anything else that we didn't get to that you want to tack on to go with it?
Mm.
You just like I didn't want to interrupt you, but I had a thought when you
Yeah.
were talking about how important R2 is. Like we know, because this podcast is called Podcast of the Wills, that it was originally supposed to be the Journal of the Wills as the Star
Correct.
Wars saga.
Mhm.
Do you think that the people who were journaling of the Journal of the Wills used R2's database? I think that would be an interesting contact.
It'd be interesting. Like the nerd in me wants to point out like that like the wills are
I would
like
say they were much more ancient would be
yeah,
the
they're
issue.
these
I don't
like
know, man.
weird ethereal out of our context beings, right?
Yeah.
Um I always take any opportunity I can and tell people to read the books from a certain point of view.
And I
There's
have
one
Yes.
for A New Hope and there's one for The Empire Strikes Back, and
Hmm.
they both feature a story from the perspective of the Wills that's hilarious, and them discussing how to chronicle it, and those are just such fantastic books. I cannot wait for From a Certain Point of View of The Phantom Menace. I really hope
Hmm.
they keep that going
I don't want
because
to wait 40 years though.
no, I think we're gonna get to a point where we maybe do 30.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if we
In our
wait
Well, Return
lifetime.
of
until
the Jedi will be next. They'll do that one next.
Yes.
yeah, and so I think they would want to take advantage as soon as they can. Maybe do 2029 for the Phantom Menace. I'd love it. If they stop
Yeah.
after that, I could die happy, but, like, I just the
Well,
Phantom Menace, is obviously important to me, so,
For
yes.
sure.
I want more
anyway.
stories from the perspective of Sabe.
Yeah, more
Yes.
Yeah.
give E.K. Johnston all the stories.
That's
Please.
right.
Um,
All the stories.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like, so much of what goes on and it's not to belittle, like, the conversations that are gonna come after, but I feel like so
Hmm.
much of it ties back to the major themes that we've talked about for sure.
Without a doubt.
Focus determining your reality now, not at the expense of the moment and everything, and
Hmm.
just all of this stuff, and just my main thing reiterating that we remember that the big picture's only the big picture when all the small stuff comes together,
Exactly.
and you're the small stuff, you and your story, and so like zooming in on you and remembering that the the big stuff only gets it right if you get it right, um, is just as important and something I think big in this story, and certainly something near and dear to like Lucas's heart. He talks often about like the inspirations of this leading us to make the right choices. We're all Anakin standing at the window with an opportunity to make a good or a bad choice.
Hmm.
And so, recognizing that we're all symbiotic, your choices affect not only you but others, and taking that seriously, and striving to make the good choices, the helpful choices, the kind choices. Because Lord knows we all complain so much about how much we need more kindness and goodness, and yet we are so stingy with it.
Yep.
Just
Right.
help people. Win a
Right.
pod race or two. Do
Mhm.
something.
The quote that I use more than any: "See a need, fill a need."
Exactly.
That's from
So,
robots.
I think, and we preach often, that this is the most definitive Lucas film.
Yes, the
Uh,
AC purist Star
and
Wars.
that's not
Mhm.
a stacking better than, worse than.
Sure.
I think this is the most pure love letter that Lucas could give to inspire kids and adults alike.
Absolutely.
Everything he stands for is in this movie if you're paying attention, and everything he would hope you would, and I think we should strive to stand for, is in this movie. And I think that coming back around to where we started with this is what makes it more than a movie and more than
Mhm.
Faking in Space.
Mhm.
Without a doubt. I love that. This has been such a fantastic conversation. I'm so
Yeah.
thankful that I got to spend this time with the two of you. Before we get out of here, where can everybody find you? What's the easiest way to get hooked up with the Nerd Herder? Because I do want people to check out your show. It's such a fun show. And y'all
Yeah,
cover so many wide ranging topics that are so enjoyable. So give us the plugs.
absolutely. So the best way to connect with us is Twitter. We do have a favorite social media child, and that's at NerdherderCast, NRD Herdercast. You can also find us if you search Nerd Herder Cast on Facebook or Instagram. But if you want the most interaction and conversation with us, Twitter is the best place for it. I know that sounds counterintuitive because Twitter is such a cesspool, but we try to make it a little positive corner.
That's right.
And if you find us there, then you can visit our link tree that has all the important stuff like our YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. That way you can choose your favorite place to get our voices in your ears and our nerdy conversations in your brains, and you can decide for yourself whether or not you've lowered your standards by listening to us. But we always promise that our guests are the real winners.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, we recently talked about Star Wars Rebels and the Book of Boba Fett. And we'll be back to talking about Batman, like you mentioned. So, lots of cool stuff
Mhm.
happening with us that we'd love for you to check out if you feel so inclined.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, thank you again so much. I have had such a great time. And thanks to
Us
everybody
too.
who is listening, watching, paying attention to Podcast of the Wills. As always, may the force be with you always.